Welcome aboard Delta Airlines. Please enjoy your flight, and thanks for choosing Delta.
Jody Avirgan here. Thanks for listening to ESPN Film's 30 for 30 podcasts from the producers of the award-winning 30 for 30 series. These new audio documentaries are an incredible collection of sports stories you need to hear to believe. It's really a win-win. Delta Airlines makes your travel experience easy and enjoyable with real-time bag tracking, e-boarding, and passport scanning during check-in. And ESPN's 30 for 30 podcasts make your in-flight time rich with stories that will keep you coming back for more. So sit back, relax, and keep listening to some of the most compelling sports stories ever told.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
Hi, Dave Rothenberg in for Stephen A. As we roll along this week, putting June to rest and saying hello to July. June 29th, Mets with a good win last night, although they have, as we've discussed ad nauseum, pretty much they are irrelevant at this point. But Mets pitched well, and, you know, it is important if you get the guys that are available via trade, like a Granderson, to play well. And I understand that for the Mets, it doesn't really matter, but Granderson has played very well of late. He's back in that leadoff spot. He's hitting the ball very well. He's getting on base. Matz was great. I mean, when Matz is healthy, guys, and I don't want to say he's an elite pitcher, but he is clearly an upper echelon pitcher when he is healthy. And he was terrific last night. Yankees, much-needed victory, especially the way the night before went. Not only a much-needed victory, but a much-needed victory where you didn't have to tax the bullpen. You didn't have to have, the camera isolated on Joe Girardi and fist pumps after Clippard gets an out. And is Chapman available? Can Betances pitch? Tanaka was good. Now, this all comes with the caveat of, Chicago is horrendous. But when we give the Yankees a hard time the night before when they lose, you got to give them some semblance of credit the next night when they go out and they win, and they did that, and they took care of business, and the Red Sox lose, and the Yankees are back in a virtual tie for the first place in the American League East. And the Knicks. And, the Knicks are everything you hear. You're pulled in all these different directions. Are they heading in the right direction? Are they just treading water? Do they know what they are doing? Do they know who they're going to do it with? And it's so strange because I don't think, and maybe they don't even know what they're going to do. And I think this what drives people crazy. Where is the statement of what the plan is in place? Like maybe Steve Mills or maybe James Dolan or maybe someone should hold a press conference and say, guys, this is the plan. This is what we're going to do. Like right now, we're all speculating that Masai Ujiri or David Griffin or the Sam Presti or guy, and we'll get into this. I don't know if you saw this. The dark horse candidate for the man to run the Garden, president of the Knicks. Did you see this? Sit down. Calm down. Take a deep breath. Isaiah Thomas. And I almost don't have the words to formulate, to get them out to make sense. If the Knicks hire Isaiah Thomas to run this organization, you know what my first thought is? They deserve everything they get. Everything that goes against them. Every bad trade, every bad article, every fan that wants to give up season tickets, they would deserve. And you say, yeah, but Isaiah drafted Jamal Crawford and had Isaiah Thomas, guys, and you can look it up, has had multiple jobs since he stopped playing in the NBA. I don't think he's succeeded at one of them. And I like Isaiah. I've talked to Isaiah. He's a personable guy. He's a nice man. That's great. My dad's a personable guy and a nice man. I don't want him leading the Knicks the same way I don't want Isaiah Thomas leading the Knicks. And how Knicks would it be if Isaiah Thomas is the guy they bring back? He's a dark horse. And I guess that's what Frank Isola has reported at the Daily News. And seems to everyone that Masai Ujiri is the hot name. And then I guess you get to the conversation of, are you willing to trade, real compensation for a guy that's going to be making those decisions? I am, and I know a lot of people are opposed to that. Now, I'm not willing to give up an unprotected lottery pick. Like, I'm not giving up the 2018 first-round pick for Masai Ujiri. Knicks win 22 games. They wind up with the third pick. No, I'm not giving that up. But if you're going to give me a lottery, how about this? The next pick that is not in the lottery, would you give that up? Because I would give that up. And I know a lot of people say, I'm not giving up anything for Masai Ujiri. No, I think you're wrong with that. I think he's a smart basketball guy. I think he did a really nice job in Denver. I think he's done a really nice job in Toronto. And you say, yeah, but the only thing he's done well was fleecing the Knicks. He's a smart basketball man. That's what I need. That's what we've discussed. But getting back to the point that we started with here, we'll make it very interactive today, guys, because I know people want to talk Knicks, and I don't blame you. Only the Knicks can be irrelevant in January, February, March, and April, and unbelievably relevant in June, July, and August. Only the Knicks, right? 866-SAY-ESPN, 866-729-3776. A lot of speculatory things going on. I guess Jeff Teague is someone that the Knicks are now interested in. I like that. I like Jeff Teague. He's a legitimate point guard, and they have a point guard there. They don't need Jeff Teague. So would I love to bring him in? Look, I don't think that Jeff Teague puts you over the top, but what I wish they would tell us, and this is what I find to be a bit frustrating, is where are we? You heard rumblings that Carmelo Anthony, if he's bought out, would want to go to Houston. If he's bought out, how are you going to buy Carmelo Anthony out now? Isn't that why Phil Jackson? Maybe I just don't get it, and that's certainly possible. But my understanding is that Phil Jackson is not here because he wanted to buy Carmelo Anthony out, and the brass said no. And Steve Mills and James Dolan said no. We're not buying $55 million out. So how can that be an option right now of buying this guy out? That makes little to no sense to me. I'm not buying him out. I'm not spreading it out over 5 years at $10 million. I'm not doing it, guys. Carmelo, you have two choices. We will trade you to a team that you give us the okay, or you'll be on this club come October. That's it. I'd call Houston. You want to go there? You don't have to give me 100 cents on the dollar. I'll take 70 cents on the dollar. I'll take, Eric Gordon, Ryan Anderson for Carmelo Anthony. I'll take Eric Gordon and another player that works out financially. I'll take Ryan Anderson and another player that works out financially. I'm sorry. There is no way that I am going to allow. Look, Carmelo Anthony, big-time player, big-time scorer, always gets his way. This is the one time, and I know Dolan loves him, and I know that the Knicks organization has bent over backwards to try and make it work with him here. Melo, we love you. You want to stay here? You can stay here. We'd like to move on. You have a better chance to move on. But here's the thing. We're not releasing you. We're not buying you out. We're not letting you go choose, oh, yes, I'd like to go to Cleveland to win a no. You want to go to Cleveland? Call Cleveland. Have them call us. Let's work out a deal. You want to go to Houston? Let's have Houston and us speak and figure out a way to make a deal. We are not giving you away for nothing. It's not going to happen. And all you people, and I had a bunch of you yesterday, I was on a lot, call and tell me, Phil wasn't really that bad, Dave. If you think about what he did, and you think about, Porzingis and Hernan Gomez and the Robin Lopez signing, Courtney Lee, Aaron Aflalo, he wasn't terrible. Guys, I wasn't looking for him to come in and for you to say, you know what, at the end of the tenure of Phil Jackson, he wasn't terrible. That, to me, is terrible. I wanted, and I think we all wanted and agreed, that Phil Jackson was going to come here and turn this thing around, and he did not. Because you know what? The Knicks are, I think you could argue, in worse shape today than the day that he took the job. And therein lies the problem. So we have a million ways to attack this, and we will for the next couple hours. We've got the how do they rebuild? Do they go off there a guy like Jeff Teague? Do they just go in and say we're going to get rid of Carmelo and we're going to have Porzingis and Ntilikina and Courtney Lee and Joakim Noah and Hernan Gomez, and we're going to wind up with a top 2 or 3 pick in next year's draft? Like, what is the goal here? Do you want the Knick? Like, are you of the mindset that, Dave, let's get as good as we can be and wind up and fight and claw and scrap to get that eight seed? I tell you, Steve Mills, Jeff Hornacek is the duo that leads you into the future. Can you deal with that? Or do you say David Griffin or Masai Ujiri or somebody of a higher ilk than maybe is Steve Mills right now? And Stephen A. sat with us yesterday and said, you know what? There is no way I'm moving forward Jeff Hornacek. Van Gundy, Mark Jackson, but I am making a move. So you've got so many different storylines to what the Knicks are right now. And we're going to discuss as many as we can. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. And it's funny, because I guess I was talking to DiPietro yesterday. And he said they keep Melo because people love him. They want to come and they want to watch him. And I'm not saying that this neutralizes that point. But I saw the top 15 jersey sales in the NBA. Carmelo Anthony's not on there. I wonder if Melo is more big legacy than big-time player at this point during his career.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
People chiming in, and you can tweet over to me at Rothenberg ESPN. The big man does. He says, Dave, have Melo sit on the bench like they did Stephon Marbury his last Knicks years. Either that or accept the trade or ride the pine. I get that, but I think what you want to not have happen is for any of the bad blood or negativity to rub off on the guy that you think is the future of this franchise, and that's Kristaps Porzingis. I have to imagine that part of moving on from Phil Jackson was we want to make Porzingis comfortable and want to stay. And if you do the opposite and you show, look, if you fall out of favor, this is how we're going to treat you, then how does that lead Porzingis to want to stay? In fact, it probably doesn't, right? 866-729-3776. Carmelo fan, and I think you know what direction he's going to go in. Give it a rest. You join the bandwagon now of trashing Carmelo Anthony. I don't want to trash Carmelo Anthony. I really don't. But I don't know how you can look at Melo and do anything but kind of be tough on him. I mean, what success outside of the 1 year has he had since he's been here? Last year's team, is he a team leader? Did he make them better? The Eastern Conference is really, really bad. And they didn't come anywhere near going to the postseason. If you're going to be the best player on your team, the face of the team, a lot of that has to fall on you. And I'm not look, I'm not coming out saying Knicks didn't go to the conference finals. That's on Melo. But they didn't compete to get the 8th seed. Some of that has to go on Carmelo Anthony. No? 866-ESPN. I'm telling you, and I said it to open the show, and I feel so strongly about it. If they bring Isaiah Thomas back, everything bad that happens to this organization moving forward, they deserve it. They deserve it. Why would you? If you have a business and you had a guy that worked for you and he did not succeed when he worked for you, and then he left, and then he was somehow back in the building on the floor below, would you hire him again at a high-level job? That feels to me like you're taking your head and you're running it into the wall. It makes no sense. Joe in Westchester. Joe, you're on ESPN Radio.
Rothenberg, I love listening to you. Listen, I never liked the Carmelo signing. I'm 63, so I know the Knicks from like 1967. He's a tall Allen Iverson. When you take on Carmelo...
I got to tell you what, Joe, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm not going to cut you off. I'm going to interrupt you for a second here. Allen Iverson was a warrior. Allen Iverson took a team of B-level players and took them to the NBA Finals. Carmelo Anthony, in my mind, would love to be what Allen Iverson was.
Yeah, but you're right. But Carmelo had no heart the way Allen Iverson did. However, I blame ownership and management because they didn't build around Carmelo. Carmelo is all truth in advertising. He never gave you anything other than what you ever knew Carmelo to be. He wasn't a leader in the locker room. He wasn't a leader on the court. In fact, quite honestly, when he had his shoulder problems, he was under the basket, mixing it up, missing the offensive rebounds, but trying. The thing is that, you're Jim Dolan, you hire Phil Jackson, and you hire all these coaches. We're not talking. You don't hear this talk about the San Antonio Spurs. You don't hear this talk.
Joe,
about
the Spurs are the perfect
culture.
organization. The Knicks are the antithesis of that.
The culture is different, and so I'll let you comment. But the problem was never Carmelo. The problem was those who brought him along. It's like, okay, you're a sports radio station, and I'm hiring an opera DJ to fit in with your format. Something's wrong with me if I'm doing the hiring. But
I got to run, Joe, and I don't think that analogy is ideal. Look, Carmelo Anthony has been on a team that has not been well run. I think we would all agree with that. But I'll just ask you this. Do you think you've gotten everything out of Carmelo Anthony? Do you believe that when the Knicks traded Felton and Gallinari and Mozgov and Wilson Chandler and picks, did you think you were going to get a better Carmelo Anthony? Or do you, or would you have said, you know what, give me this. This is exactly what I was expecting. I thought we were going to get a better version of Carmelo Anthony. And maybe I was so excited when they made that deal. And maybe that's a me issue. Maybe I didn't recognize, you know what, Melo is a scorer, yet limited player / not a team leader. Maybe I didn't know that he does have limitations. But to compare him to a guy like Allen Iverson, who would give you his kidney to get to the basket, who led a team of Eric Snow and Tyrone Hill and mediocrity and Aaron McKee to the NBA Finals, that's not fair. Allen Iverson is a head and shoulders better player than Carmelo Anthony. Allen Iverson was an elite defensive player. You would have to cut off Allen Iverson's foot to keep him out of a game. And again, I like Carmelo Anthony. I just think that if you would have said to me, if we rewind right now and went back to 2011 and said, this is what you're going to get from Carmelo Anthony over the course of his career, sign for it right here, I'd say, no, thank you. I want more. Ray in the Bronx. Ray, you're on ESPN Radio.
Hey, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Dave.
What's up, Ray?
I'm all right, man. Well, we didn't agree on Tom Brady, but we agree on Carmelo Anthony. And I do want to say that it's hard to gauge effort, right? But to your point, I don't feel like he's given me everything that he could have. How do I know that? That's probably some intangible I can't really measure, but I just feel that way. I don't feel like he's giving me the most. And
well,
I also wanted to
let me ask you this, right? Do you get the biggest games out of Carmelo Anthony in the biggest games?
No. You don't.
Right. I agree. I don't think you do.
And he doesn't bring it. And I don't think it's fair to compare him to Iverson for every reason you said. Allen Iverson was a completely different competitor. He had a completely different viewpoint of how to play basketball. That's how he got those guys, the Sixers, to the finals, which is what you alluded to. But I wanted to ask you, though, Dave, I know because we might have some PTSD because of Phil, and he was a neophyte at being a president, but would you consider Jeff Van Gundy in that position, or does that scare you too?
I would feel good about Van Gundy. I think Van Gundy is a basketball lifer. He's had a lot of success. I think he's a smart basketball mind. You tell me I'm going to get Van Gundy and Mark Jackson, and thanks for the call, Ray. If you tell me I'm going to get ABC's broadcasting team, I would be fine. I would be comfortable. I'm not impossible. I don't think my expectations are out of line. I just want them to win. And I find it very hard to believe. Look, Steve Mills, I don't think we know. Is it a big name that's going to make you say, great, we're moving in the right direction, this is phenomenal? No. Is it a guy that you look at and you say, maybe, I'm not sure about? Yeah, I think that's what he is. So is it a sexy hire? Certainly not. You'd hope that one of these two, if they stay with Mills, maybe they bring in a coach that gave you a little more confidence, or vice versa. If they brought in a GM like Ujiri, or if you don't want to deal something for him, David Griffin. If they brought in somebody and said, man, I believe in that guy, and he goes out and says, I want to hire, the next Steve Kerr, unknown, but I think you could buy into that. But a Hornacek-Mills combo for me doesn't really move the needle. Like I said, and how much more true could it be? February, no one wants to even talk about the Knicks. June, no one can get enough about the Knicks. Isn't that almost the definition of dysfunction?
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
Dave Rothenberg in for Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN app, talking Knicks, but you're welcome to chime in on the Mets or Yankees. We're not quite NFL ready yet, right? Like, we're about 3.5 weeks until we start with training camps, and then we go full force. The thing is, and I'm not trying to be mean, I'm really not, but I just wonder, if you're a Jets fan, can you have anything more than I want to be bad and I want to watch USC, UCLA, and Wyoming college football every week? Like this is almost unprecedented to have a local New York football team that you know coming into the season is going to be awful. You see, the Jets were awful last year, but we didn't know that, right? They brought back Fitzpatrick, and they had a healthy Decker at the time, and Marshall, and a good defense. We didn't know Revis was like. It's been a long time since you've looked at one of these two local football teams going into a year and said 3 wins, 2 wins. So I think in some way, and I know this is a weird thing to say, there's a piece of when you look at the Jets, you say, you know what? This is going to be a calm year, because I know that the expectations are non-existent. I know that we're not going to win 8 or 10 or 12 games. I know that we're going to struggle in a lot of games. So I'm gonna have USC parties. I'm going to invite friends over 10 o'clock every Saturday night to sit there and watch Sam Darnold. And then you sleep over, and then we wake up, we go out for breakfast, then we watch the Jets at 1, and we kind of laugh at things. It's going to be a rough season. Now, I don't think that means that on the other side of things, it can't be really, really bright. But this year for the Jets, it's going to be rough. But at least there's a plan in place. And getting back to the Knicks, that's what upsets me so much with the Knicks. I don't know that there's a plan in place. I don't know that they're heading in the right direction. I don't know these things. I can't sit here and tell you Jackson's gone, Mills is in charge, they're going to hire a good GM, they're going to bring in a big-time coach, and things will turn. I don't know that. In fact, I think that's probably more not the case than is the case. And that, to me, is what's so upsetting. Like, would I be shocked if the Knicks could put together a team that won 37 to 40 games this coming year? No. Would I be shocked if the Knicks had a team that won 20 games this year? No. I know the Jets aren't winning 8 games. But the Knicks are in this area of a degree where they could be awful or they could be very mediocre. And what do you want? Look, in the NBA, I think it is better to be awful than it is to be very mediocre. I think it's the truth in any sport. I mean, look, I'm a Giants football fan, right? You know that. I'd rather the Giants go 3-13 than 7-9. And I've said it year after year after year. I really, truly believe that. When you start to look at some of the names in next year's NBA draft, you know, Michael Porter, that's the kid that was supposed to go to Washington, remember? University of Washington. And then Lorenzo Romar was fired. And then he decided to go because Missouri hired his dad as an assistant coach. Oh, I'll go to Missouri. But next year's draft is supposed to be big time as well. So you've seen in the NBA, if you have a top pick 2-3 years in a row, and you've already got Porzingis, and you're hoping Ntilikina turns into something, yeah, I think you could turn this thing around. But not if you don't have the right pieces in place to make those decisions. Therein lies the problem. Ray in Queens. Ray, you're on ESPN Radio.
Rothenberg, how you doing?
Good. What's up, man?
Yeah, question, man. Listen, I kind of disagree with you, right? Am I wrong? Did I hear you say Allen Iverson was an elite defensive player?
Oh, I think Allen Iverson was an elite defensive player, yes.
Elite? Well, maybe we missed something because I sure enough didn't see that throughout his career. What I seen was the 76ers front office did the smartest thing ever that the Knicks didn't do for Carmelo Anthony. They got him a Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah.
And they put all the right players around him, the Aaron McKees who played defense, the Lynches who played defense, the Tyrone Hills who rebounded, the Mount Mutombo who played defense. And Allen Iverson said it himself in his documentary, they did things that they knew I couldn't do, but I did things that they couldn't do on the offensive end. That's what an organization does for you. So if I'm Carmelo Anthony, do I dial it in too? Yes, I dial it in. I'm not giving y'all my all when I look at this front office.
So you know you just define the issue. I'm not giving you my all if A, B, and C. If that's true, therein lies your problem.
Well, I'm just asking you a question. What player you really know wants to give you your all when the front office is not trying to give you the pieces for you to succeed?
I don't care if the Knicks roll out, Larry, Moe, and Curly. If you're a professional player, you're going out and giving everything you have to try and win games. No?
Oh, I understand what you're saying, yes, and to an extent. But after a while, you're saying to yourself, I'm giving my all to this organization. It's like me giving my all to you, and you're not giving anything in return. Why do I got to keep giving? When am I going to be able to receive something?
Because you're trying to win. It is about him, too. And thanks for the call, man. By the way, I believe, and you guys can look this up, that Iverson led the NBA in steals, I think, more than once. So you say it wasn't – now, again, that doesn't define being a good defensive player, but Allen Iverson's a good defensive player. He's fast, quick. And you're right, they did surround him, but they didn't surround him with anybody that was a big-time player. Iverson led a team to the finals surrounded by mediocrity. So Melo has had lots of mediocrity, and he can't even get a team into the postseason. They won 17 games with him. Now, I know he was hurt for an extended period of time, and I know it led to Porzingis. But, look, I've said this. I really do believe that Phil Jackson did a bad job. And I will say that over and over and over. But for everyone to place the blame solely on Phil Jackson and not to look at some of the pieces that were here that underachieved and underproduced, I think you're making a huge mistake. Spike in Jersey. Spike. You're on ESPN Radio. What's up, buddy?
Mr. Rothenberg, pleasure to hear you. Iverson was a pretty good defender. He cheated a lot, and the guys backed him up. Phil Jackson and Isaiah Thomas have a lot in common. Isaiah, to me, was the best 6-foot guard I ever saw. Phil may have been one of the top two or three coaches. And past those things they did, they were pretty lousy at it. Let's face it. You could ad infinitum list what they did past their playing and coaching careers. As far as Melo goes, to me, he's Alex English. I mean, that's my comparison.
It's a good comparison.
Yeah, it's what I see with him. I think the only thing the Knicks have to do now, I think it's mandatory, and this is doing, I know my stuff with the Knicks. They got to get rid of Melo. Figure it out.
How? If he doesn't want to go, how?
Okay, Dave, you just here's the deal. The cap was 80 last year. It's going to 105. You look at their cap. That's where you get the room and you get your point guard. You want Teague or you want True Holiday. You got to get a point guard. You got to bring the young fella along. And I don't care if you win 20 games or 37 games. It really doesn't make a difference. And in hindsight, it's better off to win 20 games. We know how that works. And you never know what you're getting in the draft. It's the bottom of the Cracker Jack box. I don't know. You got to get him in. He got rid. Listen. Porzingis wound up looking okay here, and what he did I'm not so thrilled with. But Melo's got to go in, sit down with Dolan. I don't care about Masai Ujiri, who also passed on the DeMar DeRozan, as the Knicks passed on DeMar DeRozan in that draft, too, where they took Jordan Hill. So these guys aren't all perfect.
Nobody's perfect. But would you prefer Masai Ujiri to Phil Jackson?
Of course I would, right. But I wouldn't give anything up to get a guy like that.
I understand your point. I would. If I could offer you Ujiri for the next time the Knicks do not have a lottery pick, you wouldn't do it?
I would do it as long as I don't have to give anything up for him. I don't think it's that important.
Well, I'm telling you, you have to give up the next non-lottery pick.
Non-lottery pick?
Yes.
Well, now you're taking me back to, you can go to that
middle of the first round.
Then you got the guys, the sleepers, like the Ginobili and those guys. Yeah, you're right. I agree with you. But the bottom line is you got to get rid of this guy, free up the money, make him a deal, put him where he wants. I hear all this talk about, and it's admirable, raising his son and all. That's wonderful. But maybe he'll wind up in Houston with his buddy Chris Paul.
Great. Look, let's get that done.
That's
Spike.
It.
Look, get it done. Thanks for the call, buddy. Yeah, I don't care. Go. Honestly. I don't have I'm not vindictive against Melo. I don't care if he winds up in Houston or with the Clippers or I don't want him to go to basketball Siberia. Look, if Melo goes to Houston and they can win, great. But I'm not doing it for nothing. I am not giving up Carmelo Anthony and buying him out and letting him walk out and go wherever he wants. I'm not doing it. And you want to say that I'm vindictive? Okay, fine. I'm not doing it. I am not releasing this guy. I'm not saying, here's $50 million or whatever we can agree with the buyout, and now you pick up and you go wherever you want to go, and you're ultimately thrilled. And here's the thing, and I don't want to get into personal life because I don't think it's fair, but if his whole thing is that he's got to stay near his son, then why is he looking to be bought out and to move on? I would think then he would say, I need to be here because this is where my family is.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
Yankees back in action tonight out in Chicago. Nothing better than a 4-game set against that White Sox team. They are 33-44, and I'm not even sure how they're there. I mean, they are terrible. You look at the bottom of that batting order. Sessa and James Shields on the mound. Remember when James Shields was good? Long time ago, but there was a point where James Shields was a big-time pitcher. And that point has sailed for a very long time. Win this game tonight. Here's what I want for the Yankees. Win this game tonight. I'll even take losing 2 out of 3 in Houston. Go 2-2 over the next couple of days, and I'm fine. Come back home, and I'm fine. And then I can absolutely deal with that. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. You know there are still Mets fans who are like, well, we're 6 games under. Or 7. I guess there's 7 games under. We're 7 games under. And maybe if we can, just stop. Guys, it's not going to happen. Yeah, maybe you can get close to 500. I actually was talking to a Mets fan yesterday. He goes, if we can get to 500 by the All-Star break, there's no reason they're not getting to 500 by the All-Star break. They're not going on a run in the second half. They're not adding talent. The best thing for the Mets is to stay here, play competitive ball. Stay here, unload everybody, rebuild for next year, have good health going into next year, and then I think there's a real chance of big season for the Mets. Because the talent is there. I mean, you see how good Syndergaard is, DeGrom, Matz, Wheeler. I mean, do you realize that if they're all healthy, and I know it's a big if, and I know it's never happened, Matt Harvey's your 5th starter? Then you get Lugo and Gesellman in the pen. Things are very different if you have health with this club. And honestly, and I know it's not morbid, it's true. David Wright needs to retire. I mean, he didn't play last year. He can't play this year. Just if you look at him, he doesn't even look like the same guy anymore. Like physically, he's kind of gaunt and pale and skinny. And I mean, it's just, I don't know. I would imagine having committed your entire life to something and then having it ripped away from injury is probably, as tough a pill as there is to swallow. But at some point you have to, don't you? I would think. Alex in Brooklyn. Alex, you're on ESPN Radio.
Hey, how are you?
Good. What's up?
Good. I mean, I just want to talk about the Knicks real quick. I mean, my number one problem is that, I mean, even since Phil Jackson was here and now he's gone, but even when he was here, we were promised kind of not a rebuilding process. We were promised of kind of, competing for the playoffs or challenging Miami or Cleveland or whoever it was at the time. But the issue is right now is what's the direction of the team? I mean,
Alex, have you heard me the last 2 days? That's the question. I have no idea. I don't know. Look, I think there's a chance they keep Melo, build around him, bring in a Jeff Teague and try to get into the playoffs this year. I think they could move on from Melo, look awful, and have a season where they win 25 games and wind up with the 3rd pick. I have no idea what the plan is. And what frustrates me is I'd like someone to take the podium and tell us what the plan is, Alex.
You're 100% correct. And I mean, for example, if you already know that you want to get rid of Phil Jackson, do that before we pick our 8th overall pick. I mean, we passed up on some good point guards, and at the same time, I mean, on paper, I do think that I've been saying this every year, and we missed the playoffs for 4 years in a row, and I've been saying this for 4 years in a row. on paper, we should be able to sneak in into an 8 or 7 seed and hopefully make the series kind of competitive. But when you have no direction, when you have Phil Jackson promising this and wanting to run the triangle, James Dolan, who in my opinion does not care if we win or lose, but cares about.
I think Alex. I think there are a lot of things you can say, and thanks for the call, about James Dolan. I think you can say that he has a quick trigger and he gets rid of guys prematurely. I think you can say that he meddles and that he wants certain things from certain guys, and maybe that's an impossibility. I think you can say that some decisions he makes are very questionable. But to say he doesn't care, I can't back that one up. If you want to say you don't even think he's all that competent in picking the right people, I think you can say that. But to sit here and tell me that he doesn't care, if he didn't care, he wouldn't spend $60 million to bring in Phil Jackson. If he didn't care, he wouldn't spend money on free agents. He wouldn't pay luxury tax when he used to pay luxury tax. Look, do I think he's a great owner? I wouldn't rank him as one of the better owners in sports as far as doing the right thing for his teams, no. But to tell me he doesn't care, no, I'll fight you on that all day long. I don't think that that's true. Kenny in Jersey. Kenny, you're on ESPN Radio.
Hey, good afternoon, Dave. How you doing, man?
Good. What's up? Real quick, Kenny. I got to run.
All right. Look, you was exactly right about Allen Iverson, bro. He was a great defender. I think he led the league like 3 years in a row at one point. And in one of those years, he led the league in scoring and minutes. So
I think he led the league in minutes like 8 times or something like that. Allen Iverson, to compare Melo to Iverson, I think you're way off base with not you, but whoever does, way off base with that.
No, Melo is not the talent Allen Iverson was, and you got to think for a guy Iverson's size to do what he did, and Melo, a guy Melo's size, the game is a lot easier for Melo.
Look, we are in agreement, and Kenny, I got to run. I agree 100%. If Melo had the heart that Allen Iverson had, I think people would be a lot more pleased in the direction of the Knicks.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 80 and the ESPN app. This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. All right, Dave Rothenberg in for Stephen A. as we say goodbye to June and hello to July. Saturday, July 1, little holiday weekend. And then we move towards football. That's what I don't even like the summer. Just get me, I don't need 90 degrees and humidity. Get me to the end of July. Get me to training camps. Get me to, battles for the quarterback spots. Get me, what are we, August 3rd, I think is that game in Canton. Get me there. It's so funny, that game in Canton. I think it's Cowboys. I think it's Cowboys Cardinals, and I think it might not even be a Sunday night. I think it might be a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon. But the funny thing about that is, I am so excited for that game. Like, get me there, get me there, get me there. I watched 2 minutes, like, oh, this is awful. You know what? Get me to September 10th or September 7th. That's what I need, and we're not far off. For me, and I think a lot of people feel like this, baseball, especially when the Mets aren't relevant, is a placeholder. Baseball is you know what? I watch it. I'm interested. I play fantasy baseball. I root against the Yankees. I'm very pro Mets. Get me to early September. Get me to my fantasy football drafts. Get me there. That's where I want to go. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. So, look, I have little to no confidence in the Knicks. And reading this Frank Isola report from the Daily News earlier today, it just makes me feel more solidified in being uncomfortable about the Knicks. And the quote is, Isaiah Thomas, a dark horse to replace Phil Jackson as Knicks president. And you say, well, that's a you thing. Is that a me thing? Or is that how can you possibly think about doing this thing? Because that's what it is for me. If you woke up tomorrow morning and the headline on Twitter or Isola or wherever it was, Knicks make Isaiah Thomas team president, wouldn't you drive off a bridge? Like, that can't happen. What organization, and this is, it almost makes sense that they would do this. In 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. What kind of an organization would even consider bringing back a guy that had nothing but failure in his tenure with them. And don't say, if you look at some of the guys he drafted, it's more than the draft. There's a lot of pieces to being a general manager and a president in this league. It's the draft, it's free agency, it's trades, it's contracts, it's a coach. You think Isaiah Thomas worked the first time around? I don't. Not even a little bit. If they make that decision, you'd almost say, if they make that, I'm done. But how many times can you say that? All I'll say is this. If they make that decision, every bad thing that happens down the road to this club, they bring it on themselves every step of the way. Mike in Houston, you're on ESPN Radio. What's up, Mike?
Hey, I was just trying to get your thoughts since we're talking about all this trades with Houston. What do you think, Paul George or Carmelo would be a better fit?
Oh, I think Paul George is a better player, but the thing about Paul George in that system is he's a good defender, and they don't play any defense there. I think Paul George is the better player. I also firmly believe, Mike, you're going to have to give up a lot more to get Paul George than you would Carmelo Anthony.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we need defense for sure.
Yeah, but you don't play. I mean, James Harden is. It's horrendous to watch him play defense. Mike D'Antoni is not about defense. Thanks for the call, Mike. Mike D'Antoni is about we can outscore you. You can score 120, we'll score 127. I mean, we've seen that every stop. That's what he is. He's not concerned about defense. And I think a guy like Mike D'Antoni can get you to certain places, but can't get you over the top. Like, as good as those Suns teams were, and they were they special offensively. They never got over the top, right? Why? Big spot. You've got to be able to play defense, and his teams are incapable of doing that. Sean in Jersey. Sean, you're on ESPN Radio.
How are you today?
Good. What's on your mind, Sean?
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about the Knicks because here's my thing, okay? Being that I've been in some interviews with some sports teams over the last year and a half for interviews and speaking about the team and whatnot, I feel it's not Jim Dolan's to blame. I don't feel that. Honestly, the first thing that he needs to do is get rid of Steve Mills because Steve Mills, if we remember correctly, is a Phil Jackson sympathizer. He's going to push in whoever he wants to push in.
Well, it sounds like, Sean, that Steve Mills was part of the reason that Phil Jackson was relieved of his duties here.
Even still, though, you got to get rid of Hornacek. You got to get rid of Steve Mills. You got to start over. And the one person that everybody doesn't seem to be looking at is Larry Bird. Or, yes, I do agree with Jeff Van Gundy, but will he come back? And here's the other thing. The thing that nobody realizes is Carmelo wants to stay. So by keeping him and building around him, you've got a lot of good free agents. I don't agree with the Jeff Teague thing. That's just me. I mean, personally, if it was me, if I was working for the Knicks, and I am available if Dolan's interested.
Right, I'm sure he's listening and interested in you. Go ahead.
See, here's the thing. If you get he's not going to be your starter, but you get a Fredette to run your bench, there you go. You have
a who?
20 points off Jimmer Fredette.
I'll stay. You know what? Goodbye. I mean, really, you know what? You were almost making salient, knowledgeable points. I was like, this guy's not the worst thing. I don't know what he's talking about where he's had multiple meetings with professional sports teams recently, but this is nonsense. Jimmer Fredette, Jimmer Fredette he's not an NBA player. He was, the 7th pick of the draft. He went to Sacramento. He couldn't play. He bounced around. He led the NBDL in points. He came to the Knicks. He couldn't play. You bring back Jimmer Fredette. Brilliant. No, he says Larry Bird. Look, there are 50 guys I'd be happy with. I don't have my heart set on any one. I'm not like, Ujiri. It's got to be Ujiri or nobody works. Or David Griffin's the only one. You give me Jeff Van Gundy. You give me Doc Rivers. You give me Larry Bird. I mean, there's tons of guys that I would be more than comfortable with. And I don't disagree about moving on from this current regime. I just don't know what the Knicks plan is. I don't know what Dolan's plan is. Look, Dolan could be sitting in his office with his feet up and a cigar in his mouth right now saying, these are my guys. Mills, Hornacek, they've got time. They're going to figure it out, and we're going to be fine. Or if he's sitting there thinking, I can't go to battle with these two. Or Mills is a Jackson guy. If Mills was such a Jackson guy and he wanted to move on from him, wouldn't he have moved on from him? He wouldn't have made him the interim guy. He would have said, we are now in search of a new GM, which may happen anyhow. But they wouldn't be hanging on to him and letting him make the decisions for now. Like, if there was a real, I don't want Phil, I don't want Mills kind of feel to this organization, then a couple of months ago, they would have ousted the both of them, cleaned house, and given it to a guy that he wanted in place. Larry in Newark. Larry, you're on ESPN Radio.
Hey, how's everything? I'm glad to be on. I have 2 points.
Okay.
One, with the Knicks organization right now. Let's just rebuild from the beginning. So let's hire Van Gundy as head of VP, basketball operations, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hire Jackson as the head coach, not Phil, but Mark, because clearly he knows how to develop talent because we saw what happened in Golden State.
You give me Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson, I would sign for it right this second.
Wait. I have one more.
Oh, there's more. Who else are you giving me?
The actual GM. So the person who controls the roster, salary cap, and any other basketball operations that we don't really want Van Gundy to handle. Grab somebody from either Golden State that's in their ranks, or bring in David Griffin.
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. I don't think I'm asking for a lot. I just want, and thanks to the call, to put guys in place that are reasonable. That is not, a retread of a guy that didn't work. I mean, did Isaiah Thomas succeed here? Did Isaiah Thomas succeed with the Raptors? Did Isaiah Thomas succeed with the CBA? Did Isaiah Thomas succeed with the Pacers? But more importantly, did Isaiah Thomas succeed here? Why in the world would you bring back a guy that already has failed with this organization? That, to me, would be it would be typical, and it would be incredibly, incredibly frustrating. So, a lot on the table. And the thing about the Knicks now, it's not like one angle. There's a lot of angles. There's the direction of the team as far as whoever is going to be running it, what are they going to do? There's the who's going to be running an angle. There's the Carmelo Anthony angle. And there's the do you have any confidence no matter what they decide to do, they can do the right thing angle as well. Not the triangle. That's off the table. Rothenberg in for Stephen A., ESPN Radio, and the ESPN app.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
A lot of Knicks conversation, as you figured there would be on a day like today after a day like yesterday where they just immediately, you wake up in the morning, Phil Jackson, he's gone. And, look, I think most of us think that it was Dolan, but they're saying it was a mutual parting of the ways. All you hear about Phil Jackson, this is so upsetting, is that he just didn't want to be here. Like, he was lazy. He didn't give it the effort. He didn't make the appropriate travel. He went to a guy's workout last week or the week before and fell asleep. The thing for me is, and this is what drives me bananas. For me, because I don't remember championship-winning player Phil Jackson. All I remember is Phil Jackson coming to the Garden and beating the Knicks as the head coach of the Bulls over and over and over. So for me to have the Knicks hire him and kind of entrust and root for him to win, and you'll laugh at this, it like took me time. Like the minute they hired him, I was like, look, I hope he succeeds, but I have to have a come to terms moment with this guy because I spent my whole life rooting against him. Michael and Scotty, I couldn't stand those guys, and Rodman and Paxson and Kerr and Horace Grant and Cartwright, and it was a great trade, Oakley, for Cartwright, but oh my God, I hated those teams. I detested those teams. So it wasn't that easy when the Knicks said, we're going to bring in a guy that caused you, permanent damage as a teenager, and we're going to bring that guy in to run this team. But I finally figured, and I came to this honest assessment of, look, at this point, I'm so starved for any kind of winning that if it's Phil that leads us there, I can deal with that. But to find out that Phil Jackson, who was clicking on all cylinders against me in the late 80s and 90s and late 90s, comes here and doesn't care, I have a real problem with Phil Jackson. Now, I don't think he'll ever take any kind of a role again, but for me, maybe you say this is a negative way of looking at it, I can't root for this guy. He came in here He stole $60 million. The team is worse than they were when he got the job, and now he moves on. How can I root for a guy like that, who I didn't want to root for in the first place? Craig and Elmont. Craig, you're on ESPN Radio.
Hey, Dave. How you doing?
Good, Craig. What's on your mind?
Oh, yeah. It was good to meet you the other day. I met you with Anthony Donahue.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
it was a pleasure. Pleasure's all mine.
Yeah. You mentioned Isaiah Thomas. I think I would puke for 5 days. I will be so distraught if they ever get Isaiah Thomas again. I can't believe that we consider him as a GM. Like that's.
I don't know how real it is, but you know what? Well, you know what makes you uncomfortable is that we've seen the Knicks make decisions in the past that you shake your head out. Like if this was the Yankees, you're like, oh, the Yankees would never do that because they don't do that kind of stuff. If this was the Giants, you'd say this is just silly speculation because the Giants don't make bad decisions like that.
Right,
but the Knicks, this would kind of fall right in line with all the things that they've done.
What do you think about Joe Dumars?
I'd be fine with Joe Dumars.
You'd be fine with him?
I'd be fine with him. I just want a guy that I think is capable. That's all I want. I'm not looking for Red Auerbach. I'm not looking for Jerry West. I'm looking for a guy that is the pinnacle of GMs or decision makers. I just want a guy that I think is functional.
Right. It's a big decision though that has to be made.
It's a huge decision. You see what happens, and thanks for the call, Craig. You make the wrong one, it sets you back. You make a wrong pick, it sets you back a couple of years. You make the wrong pick at GM, it sets you back longer than that. Look, you make a bad pick. Calvin Pryor, bad pick, fine. Ruins that year. Maybe in next year, you're not good for a couple of years because of it. You bring in Mike McCagnon, he turns out to be a bust, ruin you for a decade or 7 years. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. Evan is on ESPN Radio. What's up, Ev?
Hey there. How you doing?
Good.
Hey, I just wanted to comment on the Knicks job about who should be coach or the president of player operation. That's the guy before me. I got my heart set on Joe Dumars replacing Phil Jackson and possibly bringing in Mark Jackson as the head coach. I think that will work.
I'm fine.
I think Joe Dumars has the credentials to get the job done. It probably would be tough, but I know he probably will be the best man to fit for that job. What you think?
I don't know that I would sit here and tell you that Joe Dumars is the best guy for the job, but I think that I'd be more than comfortable if Joe Dumars got the job. I just don't want a guy that I look at and say, I don't have any trust in him. There's a lot of guys that I like.
That's going to build a championship. And
yeah, but there's a lot. Look, I think David Griffin is fine. I think Masai Ujiri is fine. I think Sam Presti is fine. I think if you went out and again, I don't know the ins and outs, and thanks for the call, Evan. But, whoever is the helper out in GM, out in Golden State, I'd be fine with that. The Sean Marks of what the Nets just did. I'd be fine with that. I don't have my heart set on one guy. When they make that final decision, if there is, they could stick with Steve Mills for all we know. But if they make that final decision, yeah, then I'll comment on it. But I don't have a guy. I don't look at this one person out there. I know who I don't want. I know I don't want Isaiah Thomas. There's no one else in my mindset right now that I'm sitting here saying I can't have that guy. There's only a few people that I would look at and say, oh no, Isaiah Thomas is one of them. Like, what in the world would lead any team to bring him back? You failed here. You failed there. You failed there. You failed there. You ruined that league. Come on back. We'd like to give you another opportunity. I know that Dolan likes him. We all know that. He's made it clear. He sat here and said, I'm an Isaiah Thomas guy. You can like him, but you can't hire him. At least that's the way I see it. Matt, you're on ESPN Radio. What's up, buddy?
Hey, how are you doing?
Good.
Dave?
Good.
Yeah, and the people are saying Mark Jackson and Jesse and Gundy going to the Knicks. My big thing is, why would they even go to the Knicks? They got it made in the shade working for ESPN. And the one guy I would like, I'm from Columbus, Ohio, is Gwiff from the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Here's the reason. Because some people, and thanks for the call, need to be challenged. There are some guys out there in any profession that, commentating is great. commentating fulfills a lot of things, and it's easy and it's fun and you get to travel. But there are some people out there that need the competitive nature of sport. So if you're Mark Jackson, you coached in this league, you had success in this league, you moved on in this league, and maybe he looks at it like when the right job opens up, I'm going to jump back in. Look, I don't know. Phil Jackson was here for 3 years. He had little success. So I don't know if Mark Jackson or if Jeff Van Gundy or any of these guys look at it and say, I want back in. But I think that's the reason. But you're right. They make a lot of money. They're famous. They're respected. And they probably don't have to work nearly as hard as you would if you had a job with the Knicks. But some guys want the competition. Bill Cowher basically said, I'm done. He had huge success as a young coach in the NFL. He won a Super Bowl. He's done, and it doesn't look like he's coming back. I mean, he's involved in every big-time opening. Well, maybe Bill Cowher. How long has he been out now? But there are some guys that they need it. They need it. They thrive on it. They want the competition. And as great as it is to be a broadcaster, there's no competition. And Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy are very good. I think that they're both funny and give great insight, and they're terrific at what they do. But some need more. And we'll see if those are two guys that need and want more.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
Knick's very relevant because they're dysfunctional. And that's the truth. It's funny. My father-in-law said to me when I just had married my wife, and we were sitting around talking about a dysfunctional member of the family. And he hasn't given me a lot of great advice in the 13 years that I've been married to his daughter, but he did have one thing. And I said, why do we sit around talking about this person constantly? And he said, because to talk about a normal person is boring. To talk about a dysfunctional person or a person that doesn't get it or they drive you crazy or any of those things is fascinating. And that's the truth. And he's right. To talk about, I don't know, Miami, who's not great, not bad. Pat Riley, Spoelstra, terrific leadership, Whiteside, right? Like, that's kind of boring. Not that there aren't times where you would discuss Miami and they're not relevant, but the Knicks are so it's fascinating how dysfunctional this organization is, isn't it? Like the fact that we have no idea what they're doing. We have no idea what direction they're going. They can come out and say, Hornacek, Mills, that's our duo. Sit back and let's see what we can do. They could come out and say, we're going to build around Carmelo Anthony, so get used to it. That's what we're doing. They could say, Melo will be moved. He will not be here to start the season. Plan for that. They could say, guys, we're all in to try and sneak into the postseason. Get on board with that. They could say, we know we're not going to be very good, and we're going to have a season that we're not going to be very good, so deal with the rebuilding process here. You have no idea. And that's why it's so fascinating. And that's why it's so frustrating. And that's why they're so relevant. Because they're so frustrating. Joe in Connecticut, you're on ESPN Radio. What's up, Joey?
How you doing, Dave?
Good.
I just there was a caller earlier that said that Dolan doesn't care about the Knicks winning. Just wanted to say it's far from the truth. I used to work for him, and he cares about his Knicks and them winning to the point where it's almost a fault.
Well, I defended him to the hilt before, and I think there's certainly ways that you can come down on James Dolan and say he hasn't done great with this organization, and they certainly haven't won the way you'd hope. But to say he doesn't care, I don't think could be further from the truth.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else, Joe?
Thank you.
All right, there you go.
Thank you.
There you go. We just got a little insight into the mind and the world of James Dolan. This gentleman worked for him and says he does care, but we know he cares. You don't spend that much money on a team if you don't care. He does care. He is involved. The problem is there's times he's too involved, and the problem is the times that he's not involved, he needs to get involved. So you kind of can't win in any way with him sometimes. Jay in California. Jay, you're on ESPN Radio.
Dave, this is just a joke, but this isn't my point. But I was just about to say that maybe, and I just thought of this right before you came to me, but maybe the Knicks should hire the bus from the Lakers that Jeannie just fired
So then the Knicks, maybe it's a horrible joke. Maybe
Yeah, it's not winning me over as you're starting it. So why don't we
No.
quit while you're ahead, and you can make the point that you
I want to go ahead and quit. So here's the thing here. What I think the problem is I think that he's having a hard time finding someone to run the organization while he's away doing something else. I don't think that he just is careless about his team like it's a toy or something. I think he cares about the Knicks. I think that is hard finding somebody that's going to make the decisions that are best for what.
I think, Jay, what has to happen is that he has to trust and find the guy and put him in the spot of the presidency of the Knicks and say to him, you're in charge, you make the decisions. That's what they need. Let me go back, Jay, and let me tell you a story, okay? Late 70s, Giants had two members of the Mara family who hated each other, couldn't stand each other. And Paul Tagliabue, the commissioner of the NFL, sat down with the Mara family and said, I know you don't get along. I know you're at odds, but here's the thing. It's important for the Giants to be good for this league. I'd like to suggest a gentleman to run the Giants by the name of George Young. I think he's smart. I think he's progressive. I think he gets it. I think that you're in good hands if he took the role here and ran with it. And you know what the Maras did? They said, okay. And they hired him. And that was in 1979. The Giants then hired Ray Perkins, who led them to the playoffs. And then he left for Alabama. And then they hired Bill Parcells, who won 2 Super Bowls. And then they wound up with Tom Coughlin, who won 2 Super Bowls. And now you look at the Giants, you say, my God, there was a time where they were dysfunctional. You know the Giants, and thanks for the call, Jay, didn't go to the playoffs from 63 to 81? They didn't go to the playoffs for 18 years. But George Young comes in, drafts Phil Simms, drafts Lawrence Taylor, brings in Bill Parcells, drafts Carl Banks, and all of a sudden, this team becomes a juggernaut for an extended period of time. But yes, sometimes you just have to hire the right guy. Give him the reins and walk away and let him do what needs to be done. And that's what the Giants did, and I think the Knicks could learn a lot from that back in the late 70s. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. Edwin in the Bronx is on ESPN Radio.
Hey, Dave. How you doing, man? Hope all is well.
Yeah, absolutely, Edwin.
Well, first thing, I haven't heard it. I'm good to see that a couple callers said it. I would really love Joe Dumars. I don't even know why he doesn't have a job right now as a GM. But another thing, I don't get why everybody's so high on David Griffin. I mean, I really felt like LeBron James was really the general manager of that team. And if they do bring in a GM, is it most likely that Jeff Hornacek is out as coach? Because I would love Mark Jackson as well. What do you think, man?
Oh, I think if you look, if I'm a GM and I'm a big-time GM and they really want me and they say, you know, we'll offer you big salary, we want you to run things, I think it's got to be, look, I got to be able to pick my own coach if I want then. You know, you can't tell me that I have to come here and I have to work with a coach that I don't like. And maybe he likes Hornacek, but most GMs I would think would want to bring their own guy in.
All right.
Yeah, that's what I think most GMs, and thanks to the call, Edwin, would prefer to, it's my guy. All right, if you want, again, and that's why I think if you bring in the right president to run this thing, or if you bring in the right GM to run this thing, you back off. You know, Dolan meddled for a long time. But the thing he did well with Phil, and it didn't work out, we know that, but the thing he actually did well with Phil was he gave Phil the reins, and he backed away and he said, Phil, this is yours. You do with it what you see fit to do with it. And I know there's some conjecture what happened with Melo and whose decision was that, the no trade and all that stuff. But he did right by Phil by giving him the keys to the car and letting him drive it. Now, unfortunately, Phil drove it right off the road into an embankment, and we're not yet out. But he did leave him alone. Rob wants to talk about the NBA. What's up, Rob?
Hey, man, how you doing?
Good.
I think the NBA has done the fans a very great injustice. And what I mean by that is this one-and-done thing out of college, and we're getting no talent in the NBA. They're missing the point about the Mike Krzyzewskis and Dean Smiths and Bobby Knights. That's what's missing. I don't care which team you get. There's really only 5 teams in the NBA right now.
But I think you're right about that, but I don't think that has anything to do with the one and done. I think the way the salary cap is structured and that guys want to chase the championship and create these super teams is the issue.
They don't have any talent. They don't have time with Mike Krzyzewski or Dean Smith like Michael Jordan and Magic did.
Of course there's talent in college basketball. Look, I mean, Markelle Fultz and Lonzo Ball, there's talent. Now, the issue is they're young. And thanks for the call, Rob. They're young. I mean, Michael Jordan played 3 years at Carolina. That's the difference, is that guys used to go and spend 3 or 4 years. I mean, you look at great players. Patrick Ewing, one of the great players in the history of college basketball, 4 years at Georgetown. It was unheard of to leave. I remember being in high school, and by the way, I got to correct myself, and I'll give credit to David Adelman, and he's right. It was Pete Rozelle, not Paul Tagliabue, who was the commissioner of the NFL at the time. But I remember being in high school, and I always hated North Carolina, so one of my best friends was a Carolina fan, and I remember the paper comes out and it said, not J.R. Smith, what was his name? J.R. Reed. J.R. Reed will leave Carolina and not stay for his senior season and leave after his junior year. And I remember running up with the paper to my friend and saying, you see this? He's leaving early. He's leaving early. A year early. I mean, it was unheard of to leave college basketball before graduating. It almost never happened. And now, and I think the NBA has to change it. You know, I was a proponent of a year, even 2. I think you have to change it. I think you have to go back to the way it was with LeBron, where, I mean, how do you tell guys you can't work? Which is what they're doing. So you get all these kids who have no desire at all to play collegiate basketball, just want to come into the NBA, and you're telling them, no, you've got to play college because why? And the kid, I mean, you don't know what you're getting. You see them for a year. There's no science. Look, 4 years, I think you get to know. 1 year, I don't think does a whole heck of a lot. I think NBA, I think they're probably at the point, I think they will go back to this at some point with Adam Silver, where they just say, when you're done with high school, you can come into the NBA. Because look at how many of these kids are busts anyway with 1 year of college.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Well, honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
So my producer is excellent, usually. A little curmudgeonly, but excellent. And he's telling me the stat about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which I can't even believe. Like, it took me by such a shock that I have to relay it to you. So he's going through all the teams that have the most touchdown passes in the history of their franchise. And he says, do you realize that Jameis Winston can become the Bucs' all-time touchdown leader, passer, right? Most touchdown throws in a career this coming season. So I'm thinking, well, how's that possible? This is his third year. I said, yeah, do you know what the number is? No. 80. 80! Like, that is mind-boggling to me. The Bucs have been around since the mid-'70s. That's 40-plus years. They have not had a quarterback who's thrown more than 80. No wonder they're the Bucs. Throwing more than 80 touchdowns in his career for them? And how about the leader, Josh Freeman? Not even Vinny Testaverde. Not even Brad Johnson, who actually won the Super Bowl for them. Josh Freeman. You talk about a franchise that has like 2 big moments in history. Ugh. Tampa Bay would be that team. 866 ESPN. 80. Unbelievable, isn't it? You know you're going to tell somebody that. You know that you're gonna go get a coffee later this afternoon, and you're gonna be standing next to someone. You're gonna go, listen to this. I heard this when Rothenberg was filling in for Stephen. 80. Joe and Islip. Joe, you're on ESPN Radio.
Listen, the Knicks don't change until it changes from the top. And so you go after the small names. I know they're trying to rebuild after a nothing season or seasons, but, they're not doing it right. You don't hear San Antonio or Oklahoma talk like this. That's my input.
Well, San Antonio has been at a very high level forever. So why? I mean, they have a great GM, head coach, and combination, and they have great players, and everyone wants to go there. So why would they talk like this? No, the Knicks have to find a guy, and I don't care who it is. I don't care if they call up Golden State and say we'll take the assistant GM if they look at him and they love him. I don't care if they do what the Nets did and bring in a Sean Marks and say this is yours, fix it, it's broken, fix it. There's a couple of guys that I don't want any involvement with, and one of those guys is Isaiah Thomas. And it's not personal. I think he's a nice guy. But you tell me when he's had success after he left his playing days in the NBA. Anywhere. Mark in Newark is on ESPN Radio. What's up, Mark?
What's going on, Dave? I got a point on the Knicks. While I believe that Joe Dumars would be a great hire, and whomever they pick, I think it'll probably be better than the Jackson fiasco. I firmly believe that the biggest mistake that the Knicks made was when they fired Mike Woodson. I think he would be the best coach for the Knicks with the young team. I think he's a really good coach and has the potential to be a great coach, and they need to go get him.
Well, why is he not a head coach in this league then? If
the Knicks fired him, everybody else has their coaches. I think. Mike
come on! You don't think if he was a big time coach that somebody else would want him to run their team? Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. What did Mike Woodson do but instill defense and a winning culture to the Knicks? Other than
I don't think he was
another
awful.
coach that did that.
I don't think he was awful, and you can't argue that they did have success and they did win at least up to a certain point with him. But if he's such a great coach, why is he not employed right now as a head coach?
What I'm saying is, I think that he's great for the Knicks. I think they need to let him.
You want to bring him back?
Yes, absolutely.
No. I'm not. Why does everyone want to go back? They fired him. You don't fire guys and say, you know what? Unless you're George Steinbrenner, you don't fire guys. You know what? You come back. No. Goodbye. No, I'm not doing it. I'm not bringing. And Mike Woodson doesn't move the needle for me. You know, if Mike Woodson was winning championships and you had a falling out, you moved on, you want to bring him back, fine. Mike Woodson? Ariel in the Bronx is on ESPN Radio. What's up, Ariel?
Hey, how you doing, man? I believe the Knicks should hire Van Gundy as president, Mark Jackson as the coach. KP got to go because KP already thinks he's a superstar, man. KP averaged 18 and 7. He needs to come out of his cloud. And Melo got to go, man. We got.
Why would you deal Porzingis?
Listen, man. Porzingis is not the answer. Porzingis is not going to be the first choice. He's not it, man. He averaged 18.
What does that mean? I don't even understand. What does it mean? He's not going to be the first choice. I don't even understand what that means.
He's the second or third choice offensively in a team.
He's 21 and he gives you 18 and 7. Can we at least see what he can do? Can we at least build a team around him to see what we can do? Look, it's evidenced that you're not winning anything with Carmelo Anthony. So why they would want to bring him back and build around him and force that when it clearly has not worked for years is beyond me. Now, I'm not sitting here telling you that Kristaps Porzingis will be the best player on an NBA championship team, but he's 21. He went 18 and 7. And I think his potential is big, and he should get better. So if you can't see that, and you want to keep Melo and build around him, then you know what? You deserve everything that you get. Everything that you get. This thing is dysfunctional right now, and they have to put the right pieces in place from the top down. Have a great day. We'll do this all over again tomorrow. Rothenberg in for Stephen A., ESPN Radio.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 80 and the ESPN app.